Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is fighting for his political survival, and Europe just threw him a lifeline. While Donald Trump plans to meet Vladimir Putin in Alaska this week, Zelensky fears being left out of decisions that could determine Ukraine's fate.
We'll start off with Russia, and we'll announce a location. I think the location will be a very popular one for a lot of reasons, but we'll be announcing that a little bit later. I just don't want to do it now because of the importance of what we just did.
I completely understand that. Just a follow-up. Are you surprised that Zelensky...
But European leaders and NATO just delivered a powerful message. Ukraine won't be abandoned. The president confirmed on Friday that he'll be meeting with Putin on August 15th in Alaska, describing the location as very popular for a lot of reasons. The choice of Alaska isn't accidental. This territory, sold by Russia to America 158 years ago, could witness Putin trying to sell his land deal of the century, getting Ukraine to hand over territory he hasn't even conquered. But here's where it gets complicated. Trump suggested any peace deal would involve territorial exchanges between the two sides.
I think my instinct really tells me that we have a shot at it, okay? And you'll find that out later on, and maybe even today, but we have a shot at it. Look, it's got to be solved. You know, we're not losing people. A lot of people say, why are you bothering? We're not losing people. We were spending hundreds of billions of dollars. Now we're spending nothing. We're spending no money. I guess we're making money because, you know, we have the best military equipment in the world. We're selling it to NATO. But you're losing thousands of people a week. Russians and Ukrainians mostly soldiers, but, you know, missiles are lobbed into cities and towns, Kyiv, lots of places. You've been reading the same stories that I've been reading, and we got to get it solved.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee will make their announcement as it relates to this year's Nobel Peace Prize on October the 10th, Friday, October the 10th. Is that date circled on your calendar, Mr. President?
I can't say. I mean, a lot of people say, no matter what I did, because, you know, I'm of a certain persuasion, no matter what I do, they won't give it. And I'm not politicking for it. I have a lot of people that are. I know. I mean, I read the same things as you do. But it would be a great honor, certainly. But
he acknowledged that territory has been fought over for 3.5 years with many casualties on both sides, indicating there would be some swapping to the betterment of both. For Ukraine, this is a nightmare scenario.
24 hours, they don't think that. Remember, this is swapping Ukrainian territory for Ukrainian territory, not Russian territory. And that the president so flippantly said, this is what we're going to talk about without the Ukrainians in the room, I just think is undermining his own ability to mediate an end to this horrific war. And I always say I applaud his efforts to be engaged and to try to end this war. But the strategy that he's adopted so far, I don't think advances the objective of ending the war. And contrary, if he walks out of a press conference and says, I've just agreed to give away this and that piece of Ukraine to Putin, that will set back the peace process, not advance it.
And also his lack of adherence to timelines, right? Because
as former Ambassador Michael McFaul points out, this involves Ukrainian territory only, not Russian territory. When Trump discusses this without Ukrainians present, it undermines his ability to mediate and could set back the peace process rather than advance it. Zelensky has made it crystal clear that Ukraine deserves a dignified peace.
But all partners must understand what a dignified peace is. This war must be ended, and Russia must end it. Russia started it and is dragging it out, not listening to any deadlines. And this is the problem, not something else. Accordingly, the Ukrainian territorial issue is already in the Constitution of Ukraine. No one will and will not be able to back down from this. Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. Ukraine is ready for real solutions that can bring peace. Any decisions that are against us, any decisions that are without Ukraine, are simultaneously decisions against peace. They will not yield anything. These are dead decisions. They will never work. And we all need a real living peace that people will respect. We are ready to work together with President Trump, together with all our partners, for a real and, most importantly, lasting peace.
The Ukrainian president firmly stated that Russia started the war and must end it. Ukraine's territorial integrity is enshrined in its constitution, and Ukrainians will not give their land to the occupier. Any decisions made without Ukraine's involvement are dead decisions that will never work. The stakes couldn't be higher. Putin presented his terms to Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff during a 3-hour meeting in Moscow this week. Russia wants Ukraine to cede the entire Donbass region, most of which Russia currently occupies, plus Crimea, which Russia illegally annexed in 2014. Putin's plan would freeze current battle lines while giving Russia massive territorial gains. Initially, the White House was pushing for a trilateral summit including Zelensky, but Putin has consistently refused to meet with the Ukrainian president, dismissing any direct talks by saying the conditions are unfortunately still far from being met. This isn't just diplomatic protocol.
Ceasefire and for an equitable kind of peace deal that is in Ukrainian interest and American interest as well. But I fear that in the hurry to get a deal and to get a meeting, the president is going to give Putin what he wants most, which is what you're showing right now. He wants a meeting next to President Trump that gives him legitimacy. Remember, he's a pariah in most democracies, but to stand there next to Trump, that is a great gift to Vladimir Putin. President Trump claims he's a transactional leader. I hope he has something in mind for a gift in return for the United States and for Ukraine.
And as Ambassador McFaul explains, meeting with a U.S. president is always a diplomatic gift. Standing next to President Trump gives Putin legitimacy when he's a pariah in most democracies. Trump's approach has been confusing at best. He's oscillated between threatening new sanctions on Russia and now scheduling this summit. For weeks, Trump had been setting deadlines for Putin to halt the conflict or face severe economic punishment. Friday was supposed to be the latest deadline. Instead, Trump announced the Alaska meeting. The timing reveals something crucial about the power dynamics. Putin believes he's winning this war.
One sees well. He is afraid of sanctions and does everything to get rid of them. He wants to exchange a pause in the war, killings, to legalize the occupation of our land. He wants to get territorial conquest for the second time. He was given to take Crimea, and this led to the occupation of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. He did not receive preventive punishment when he gathered a contingent on our borders. This led to a full-scale war and the occupation of other parts of Ukraine. Now Putin wants to be forgiven for the occupation of the south of our Kherson region, Zaporizhia, the entire territory of Luhansk, Donetsk, Crimea. This second attempt to divide Ukraine we will not give to Russia. They know that Russia is second and we are third. Therefore, we stand firmly on clear Ukrainian positions.
Russian forces now control nearly a fifth of Ukrainian territory, and the Kremlin thinks Zelensky is in a much weaker position militarily and politically than earlier this year. As Zelensky himself has warned, Putin is trying to exchange a pause in killings for legitimizing occupation of Ukrainian land, seeking territorial gains for the second time. The president provided historical context about how allowing Russia to take Crimea led to further occupation of Donetsk and Luhansk, and how the lack of preventive punishment when Russia gathered troops led to full-scale war. But Zelensky isn't going down without a fight. On Saturday, he delivered a defiant message. Any decisions taken without Ukraine will be stillborn and unworkable. He's absolutely right about this. Any peace deal imposed without Ukrainian buy-in is doomed to fail. This is where Europe stepped up in a major way. On Sunday, leaders from Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Finland, and the European Commission issued a joint statement
We
that
hope
could
that there will
change
be a
everything.
breakthrough on Friday. Above all, we hope there will finally be a ceasefire. And that peace negotiations can take place in Ukraine. This war has now lasted 3.5 years. It has claimed hundreds of thousands of victims. It is time for it to end. We cannot accept that all European security continues to be threatened by Russia. Therefore, there can be no peace here that rewards Russian aggressive actions, and possibly encourages and emboldens further actions. That is the message we have expressed here together.
After 3.5 years of conflict that has claimed hundreds of thousands of victims, they declared that any diplomatic solution must protect the security interests of both Ukraine and Europe as a whole. They emphasized that while it's time for the war to end, there cannot be peace that rewards Russian aggression or encourages further hostile actions. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas delivered perhaps the most important message. The U.S. has the power to force Russia to negotiate seriously. Any deal between the U.S. and Russia must have Ukraine and the EU included, for it is a matter of Ukraine's and the whole of Europe's security. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte backed this up with his own powerful statement. He told ABC News that Friday's summit will be about testing Putin, how serious he is on bringing this terrible war to an end. More importantly, Rutte emphasized that Ukraine must decide its own future as a sovereign nation. The European position is sophisticated and strategic.
There may be a Russian-American summit coming soon, and if the Russian-American summit comes, that's good, because there can finally be peace. But the Europeans will stay out of this. We will be sidelined in managing the security issues of our own continent. Why is this good? I continue to urge that as soon as possible, it should be a Russian-European summit, before the Russian-American summit, or if not, then after the Russian-American summit.
They're not just opposing Trump's approach, they're offering an alternative framework. As Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban warned, there may be a Russian-American summit coming soon, but if Europeans stay out of this, they will be sidelined in managing the security issues of their own continent. The joint statement welcomed Trump's efforts to end the killing, but insisted that any peace must be lasting and involve Ukraine directly in negotiations. Here's what makes the European stance so significant. They're essentially telling Trump that any deal made without European and Ukrainian involvement will fail. Given that Europe has been Ukraine's largest supporter in terms of aid and sanctions against Russia, this isn't an empty threat. The numbers tell the story. Since Russia's invasion, European allies and Canada have provided nearly 60% of the roughly 50 billion euros in annual military aid to Ukraine. NATO allies committed to providing at least 40 billion euros in 2024 alone, and they exceeded that target significantly. Rutte made another crucial point about territorial concessions. He said a future peace deal could not include legal recognition of Russian control over Ukrainian land, though it might include de facto recognition. He compared it to the post-World War II situation when the United States accepted that the Baltic states were de facto controlled by the Soviet Union, but never legally recognized their annexation. This distinction matters enormously. De facto control without legal recognition means the international community still considers the territory stolen. It keeps the door open for future liberation and maintains pressure on Russia. Legal recognition would essentially reward Putin's aggression and set a dangerous precedent for other potential aggressors worldwide. The European leaders understand what's really at stake here. This isn't just about Ukraine, it's about the entire post-World War II international order. If Putin succeeds in gaining legal recognition for territory seized by force, it signals to other authoritarian leaders that aggression pays. China is watching this closely as it considers Taiwan. Iran is watching as it supports proxy forces across the Middle East. North Korea is watching as it develops its nuclear program. The outcome in Ukraine will influence global stability for decades to come. That's why European leaders are willing to confront Trump directly. French President Emmanuel Macron has been particularly vocal, stating that the future of Europe cannot be settled in Washington or in Moscow. This represents a fundamental shift in European thinking about their own security and independence. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz went even further, saying European leaders hope and assume Zelensky will be involved in Friday's summit. He reiterated that territorial issues cannot be discussed or even decided over the heads of Europeans and Ukrainians. The question now is whether Trump will listen to these European concerns or proceed with a bilateral meeting that could isolate America from its closest allies. Some reports suggest the White House is considering inviting Zelensky to Alaska, but nothing has been finalized. Putin, meanwhile, is playing his cards carefully. He confirmed the Alaska meeting through Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov, who called the location quite logical since Russian delegates could simply fly across the Bering Strait. Putin even suggested a potential second summit could be held in Russian territory, a proposal that would be politically toxic for Trump. The real test will be whether Trump can resist Putin's charm offensive. Their previous meetings, particularly the 2018 Helsinki summit, were disasters for American credibility. In Helsinki, Trump sided with Putin over his own intelligence agencies, creating one of the most controversial moments of his first presidency. European officials are clearly worried about a repeat performance. They've seen Trump's tendency to be swayed by authoritarian leaders who flatter him. Putin is a master at this game. He knows exactly how to appeal to Trump's ego while pursuing Russian interests. But this time might be different. Trump has expressed genuine frustration with Putin over the war's continuation. He initially thought he could end the conflict quickly and cement his legacy as a peacemaker. Putin's refusal to accept Trump's earlier proposals has damaged their relationship. The European strategy is to give Trump an off-ramp that allows him to claim victory while protecting Ukrainian and European interests. By insisting on Ukrainian participation and rejecting territorial concessions, Europe is offering Trump a framework for a deal that could actually work. Zelensky, for his part, is walking a diplomatic tightrope. He needs to maintain Trump's support while refusing to accept unacceptable terms. His weekend statement struck the right balance, expressing willingness to work with Trump while firmly rejecting territorial concessions. The end of the war must be fair, Zelensky said, and I am grateful to everyone who stands with Ukraine and our people today. This was clearly directed at European leaders who are backing Ukraine's position. The Alaska summit represents a crucial moment in the war. If Trump allows Putin to dictate terms without Ukrainian input, it could fracture the Western alliance and reward Russian aggression. But if Trump insists on Ukrainian participation and rejects territorial concessions, it could force Putin into real negotiations. European leaders have done their part by making clear they won't accept a deal made over Ukraine's head. Now it's up to Trump to decide whether he wants to work with America's allies or risk isolating the United States from its closest partners. The stakes extend far beyond Ukraine. This is about whether the international system based on sovereignty and territorial integrity will survive, or whether we're entering a new era where might makes right. Europe has chosen its side. They're standing with Ukraine and the principle that borders cannot be changed by force. Friday's meeting in Alaska could determine not just Ukraine's future, but the future of international law and order. With European backing, Zelensky has a fighting chance to ensure Ukraine's voice is heard, but the real question is whether Trump will listen, or whether he'll let Putin sell him another land deal that rewards aggression and undermines everything America claims to stand for.